questions, searching for proof. That truth, big city question, searching for proof. Stories from the ground, from the booth to the roof. East Coast insights, right it with you. Yo, everybody. What's up? And welcome to another beautiful episode today, Tuesday, going live, East Coast. Oh, not East Coast Insights, 1,000-Year Plan. God, I love that track. I need a new track. Thank you again. It's been actually really wonderful to just continue on with this conversation of 1,000-Year Plan, and more I know everybody else asks, what is this in entirety? And to really simply place it, I've noticed the theme is it's the people, the ideas that are going to be laying the foundations for the future to come. So what is the bedrock that we stand on as we move forward? What are the fundamental practices inside of business, inside of health, inside of all these other areas of our life, self-expression? What are foundational elements that are super powerful, high impact, and will stand the test of time, right? I think I'm a first principle kind of guy. I love to always think in first principles because it's applicable to so many things. And today is going to be a powerful one as Gut Health 101, basic principles. I was having a discussion about this the other day with my guest that's coming on, the wonderful Dr. Charles Patterson. And it was just a reminder, when you're a kid, you're sort of told, hey, eat your veg or do this or do that, or there's some sort of commercial understanding of what healthy eating is. And I think there's lots of iterations that have happened over time, but I realized I didn't know the fundamentals properly. Even today, I think we'll just be scratching the surface, but I thought we would get into it. The gut is such a powerful part of our health, about our nervous system, how it regulates, and what are the components that help to maintain an optimal gut. So I'm going to bring on my wonderful guest, Ms. Charles Patterson, to really bring us into the fold of what is gut health and what is optimal gut health. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here again.
Oh man, always a pleasure. I know we were sort of just talking about, prebiotic, probiotic, postbiotic, and
the confusion.
Yep. And then which one was, precursor to which, for what reason, was the conversation that we were having. And as we were sort of breaking down the building blocks, and this is, just for me, it's how important it is for me to understand this information, because once you have awareness about it, I feel that's when, without even trying, sometimes you make a more positive choice in your life. You're not really having to force, I have to eat my veg, or I have to go do this, because you start to realize that's what makes up the thing I've heard of before.
Yeah, well, I think it's twofold, because when then there's this sense of like intrinsic motivation to seek the more healthy behaviors, because you understand why that, like what that is doing in your body. And then the other thing, and we've talked about this as well, it's like the understanding of what you're doing for your body as a positive thing also is really powerful in terms of that psychoneuroimmunology framework of like taking a vitamin and being like, whoa, this is really good for me, arguably is, likely to have a more impactful benefit. And that's like the whole basis of the placebo versus the nocebo effect that we have observed in science rigorously.
And just for context, for those that may not know psychoneuroimmunology, the simplest explanation, Charles just mentioned it, of like placebo, nocebo. It's the thing where, when you take something thinking about the effect and you get it. And this is in clinical trials, right? They give the tests, the people who
Even on open label placebo trials. So that's where medication has a label on it that says placebo, and the patient is taking the placebo still gets a benefit. We've seen that in research. So it's very powerful. And you're right, I should have explained. Psychoneuroimmunology is a big, long medical word, and it's an emerging field in medicine, which is really describing like mind-body medicine a lot more in a very kind of in a biopsychosocial model, but very much a biochemical model as well. So broad brushstrokes, it's like the intersection between those three things: the psychology, the nervous system, and the immune system, because they're all talking to each other. So psychology is like our thoughts, our emotions, our experience of the world. Does it feel safe out there? Does it feel dangerous or stressful? And how all of that information is programming the nervous system, which is your brain, your spinal cord, and all of the peripheral nerves all throughout your body, giving that nervous system that information of what the external environment and the internal environment is like so that we can best survive. The nervous system then talks downstream to the immune system to either say, hey, it's pretty dangerous out there, so be on alert, red alert, or no, it's okay, pretty safe, lots of food coming in, good community, good connections, no threats. And then that immune system can stand down when we've got those safety signals. So that's the broad psychoneuroimmunology.
Well, yeah, I think more and more, I think people are starting to realize, the thoughts, mind, matter relationship, how you're thinking is affecting how you feel. But in terms of the medical world, I think putting the framework and the language to it starts to make it less abstract, right?
Yeah. And it fits perfectly well with gut health, because I think a lot of people now are hearing about the vagus nerve, right? It's a cranial nerve. It's the longest one in our body. It starts up in our head and it goes all the way down through into our pelvis. And the vagus nerve is the primary control mechanism for the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest, digest, receive, repair. That's that nervous system state. And we actually know now that between the brain and the gut, recognizing that the gut is considered the second brain because it's the largest collection of neurons outside of the central nervous system, which is brain and spinal cord. So the second brain is actually sending more signals back up to the brain via the vagus nerve than the signals are coming down to the gut, which I think is pretty amazing. Like, gut health is really foundational. It's tied to so much of our mood and our brain health and our cognition and our hormones, and it's related to everything.
And do you think there's a bit of an underemphasis on how important that is to maintain like a healthy gut at the moment?
I think that these days it's pretty well documented that our gut microbiome is not as healthy as humans 50 to 100 years ago. And we know this when we look at populations of humans that are still living in more of a isolated tribal way, even in the modern day, but they don't have as much proximity with sort of modern Western culture. And when you test their gut microbiome, it's a lot more diverse than like a typical American or Australian adult. And the diversity difference is quite stark. It's like 50% difference in terms of we've lost that amount.
Oh.
Yeah. Possibly more, but this is, this is the data that we have to go off. So it's definitely, it's something that a lot of people struggle with. And there's a number of reasons for that. Some are within our control and some are not. But it's definitely something I'm getting asked about a lot. So it's, and something that maybe, increasingly we have to be more intentional about because of all of the environmental factors that are impacting gut health.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up, because I think that's such an important part about what's going on with our food systems, what's going on with the food that we acquire, at the supermarkets or at the farmers markets. That I think I read a while ago that, the nutritional content that we've been told what it is is not exactly what it is.
It's not the same anymore. The nutritional content of food is decreasing, and that's as a downstream effect of the soil quality and the soil health not being as good, which is a downstream effect of commercial and industrial farming practices. So this is why when you think about, healthcare, you really go back to farming as well. And regenerative agriculture is definitely the way. That's the future we have to return to if we really want to address health holistically. But, just to speak on a couple of those environmental factors, like glyphosate, otherwise known as Roundup, is the most ubiquitous of the pesticides that is used in the world. And 80% of the water that falls from the sky as rainwater and 80% of the air we breathe contains residues of glyphosate in it. So it is completely within our water table ecology now, that it's just everywhere because it's been so heavily sprayed over the past several decades, I suppose, since the 80s.
And could you just share, before we go into the components of it, why is gut health so critical to, like you said, it's the second brain, there's a lot of neurons there, because that communication is occurring from gut to brain, brain to gut?
Yeah, so it's actually really funny as well because we are more we're more bacterial DNA than we are human DNA because of the amount of bacteria that is in our gut and the amount of DNA that they have. So this was a very surprising thing that happened, like when we as the medical profession, not me, but when scientists actually discovered the human genome and mapped that out, they were really shocked that we didn't have like heaps of genes. We sort of had similar to like a fruit fly sort of thing.
Yep.
And that was disappointing because we thought we were going to solve everything by finding out all the genes. But the genes actually exist from our bacterial colony, which is, most abundant in the gut, but it is actually everywhere in the body as well. And so this is a very foundational thing where our gut microbiome and us as the human, we live as like a symbiotic relationship. And those gut bugs, they're powerful. So they can produce neurotransmitters like serotonin, and they can signal things to the brain. And those signals can actually override, they can be more powerful than our signals. So what I mean by that is if there's a particular type of bacteria in your gut and it likes a certain type of food, it will often send a signal for the human to eat that food because the bugs have to eat as well. And that kind of is the whole basis for the prebiotic conversation.
So that there is signals coming from the gut, which sometimes might overpower your own thoughts of decision making or discipline. Those signals are so powerful.
Yeah. And
wow.
A very simplified version of this is when there's a candida overgrowth, oftentimes people crave sugar. And then they get in a bit of a loop because they're eating sugar, the candida, which is a yeast. It's a yeast that is what we call a commensal. So it is normally found in the gut microbiome. It just shouldn't be the most abundant or dominant species.
Okay. Yep.
So you can kind of think of your gut microbiome as like a rainforest. There's a lot of diversity, and the more diversity, the better as well. And this is something that, from the American Gut Project, which was started in 2012, which is kind of like a citizen scientist program, which was cool because people could send in their data. But we can tell that people that have more diversity in their diet in terms of their fruits, their vegetables, their nuts, their seeds, their grains, their herbs, their spices, these people have more diversity in their gut microbiome as well. So it's really important.
Diversity is key. So I got DEI higher as well. So now taking it into the building block component, because prebiotic, probiotic. I know my brain was messed up, and I'm willing to sound like a fool here, but obviously the kombucha, the sauerkraut, the miso. In Japanese, there's natto. There's the fermented stuff, and I obviously had a confusion as to which was which. But could you start from prebiotic, because I believe that is the first building block?
Yes. Okay. So I will touch upon prebiotic, but just to simplify, probiotics are the gut bugs,
Gut
right? So they're the living organisms.
Right.
So let's jump to prebiotics. So prebiotics are the food for the gut bugs. So it's a specific type of fiber that resists digestion until it gets to basically the large intestine, the colon. So a specific type of fiber that we can eat in food that resists digestion through the stomach and the small intestine, and it reaches the large intestine, and it is what our gut bugs actually eat. And when they eat the prebiotic, they can proliferate and create more of themselves, more abundance of probiotics, which is our gut bugs. And then this is stepping into the next category of postbiotics, are the things that our probiotics, our gut bugs, actually create for us. And this is where that lovely symbiotic relationship really comes from, because the postbiotics are really important. They're things like short chain fatty acids, which there's 3 main ones. And in terms, like just quickly, like butyrate, acetate, propionate. And butyrate is key for maintaining the health and the lining of our gut, amongst other things.
Yep.
Other postbiotics are things like the neurotransmitters, or the neurotransmitter kind of signal, like analog signals, or certain types of vitamins, like vitamin B12 can be made in the gut, vitamin K, and then other things which are kind of newly under investigation, well, newly sort of, things like uracilin A can be made in our gut as well. And this is like a, in the longevity world, uracilin A is well recognized as like a mitochondrial support. So it's like good for longevity.
Now we were analogizing this a little bit to the worm farm, as in like we give food scraps, to the worms, right?
Yeah.
And then that's prebiotic, let's say, as the example. The worms are like the probiotics, the bugs in there, and the
Yes.
postbiotics is the worm castings that then is a beautiful fertilizer for your plants and everything.
Yeah, it's like that beautiful nutrients, and you can spread it on the plants, and they can, grow nice and strong. Yeah, that's, you've nailed it.
And so prebiotics, can you give us a few examples? Like, because first and foremost, you can be like, well, is all food just prebiotic, or is there some better than others?
Yes, so prebiotic fibers, there are a few that are kind of like specifically known, and one of the big ones that I often think of is this compound called inulin, but that is found in things like chicory root. So sometimes you'll see that in a supplement like chicory root, because it's not really something that we eat a lot of these days. Jerusalem artichoke is another source.
How many Jerusalem artichokes you eating out there, peoples?
Not a common one. Things like garlic and onion and leek.
Prebiotic.
Yeah, leek and shallots. Prebiotic asparagus is prebiotic. Dandelion greens, so not the dandelion root, but the actual bitter greens, which are also excellent for your liver. Bananas, but not the ripe ones. So they have to be more on the like underripe or a little bit green side, because that means that inulin hasn't actually converted into the sugars yet.
Right. So, and for my simpleton mind, it's like because I think it could be so easy to think, okay, well, if these gut bugs are, they're the nutrients for it, surely all my food is that stuff. But clearly
I
not.
mean, I guess the thing is, it's really important to try to eat a diverse array of foods, like whole foods, that is. So, of course, protein is super important, and I talk about that a lot to people. But the healthy fats are important, and the fiber from our colorful veggies are also really key. And we know that if we're getting a lot of variety, then our gut bugs are happier. And the thing is, the variety of color, because every color of fruit or vegetable is providing different kinds of like plant nutrients. But I mean, it is a little bit nuanced these days, because a lot of people can struggle with foods that are like quite fibrous, and the stats show that most people are under eating fiber. And so if you just tried to suddenly increase your fiber in your food, it would actually cause like a lot of gut upset because you simply don't have the microbiome that is used to that yet.
Yeah, it's
So you have to build it up slowly.
Yeah, it's not ready for it.
But some good ones, like because some of these are like hard to get, right? Like Jerusalem artichoke, chicory root. We're sort of, unless you're taking a supplement, you're not really getting those. But it can be in things like our legumes, so lentils, chickpeas, or beans. In certain nuts like cashews or pistachios. But then I think one of the kind of easiest one to hit is the resistant starch. And I know we've talked about this before. It's like when you cook and then rapidly cool potatoes, rice, or bread. It changes the starch. It modifies the starch. The temperature change modifies the starch within those foods and increases the resistant starch. And that's good because that, again, is that prebiotic fiber. So it's like, it's not just trying to eat legumes or grains or oats or anything, because some people really struggle with those and some people don't want to eat those foods, and that's okay. But it's like, how can we actually still get diversity and variety?
And I could almost hear some people thinking out there, it's like, okay, so if I get more of these, like a diverse range, like you say, of these prebiotic fibers, more colors, and I think you were mentioning something about having at least 30 different varieties of foods that you eat during a week. Was that right?
Yeah, so 30 different plant foods. And that's like, it doesn't have to just be your vegetables. It can be your fruit and your veggies, but it can be your herbs that you use in to flavor something, spices. It can be the nuts or the seeds. It can be grains, legumes, things like that. And it's also important that, like I said, like if you aren't having that many, just like try to mix it up a little bit. Don't try and go from like 10 of those foods to 30 in 1 week. Just like increase a little bit at a time so that you're gradually building up to it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, people can be like, okay, so nuts and seeds, that's like a category. Like if you're cooking with spices, cayenne pepper, curry powder, or all these sort of things, you can increase that. You can increase, obviously, a diverse array of vegetables. And
so like simple ones is like you could get hemp seeds and like sprinkle them on a salad, or like put them on a yogurt bowl, or yogurt bowls are great because obviously you can put lots of toppings, but trying to leverage like more of those kind of nuts and seeds on things or as part of things, or just like getting creative with your cooking. Like fruit can go with savory things as well. You don't have to just have fruit as like a separate little snack food. It can be part of a meal. Thinking about different herbs and spices and trying to like mix up your herbs and spices is good as well.
Love a good watermelon rocket and feta salad. And also, and the thinking, I think this is where, like, for me, I guess it motivates and incentivizes me, is where, because the reason I input more of this stuff is because the output later, you get obviously like a far better output coming from the postbiotics, right? And the postbiotics, as I said, I'm just thinking of it as like the goods coming into my body, to my nerves, into my bloodstreams, into all these parts of my body is optimized.
Yep, definitely. Because it's, those postbiotics are really impacting every other system in the body. So butyrate is like the main one for maintaining that gut lining, but it also can travel to the brain and cross the blood-brain barrier, so it can actually have impact in the brain. Right. Propionate, I think, is the one that goes to the liver and helps with the metabolic signaling. Oh, also I should mention that the postbiotics is how you naturally stimulate your GLP-1 action, or receptor in your body. So a lot. Pardon?
What is a GLP-1 receptor?
A lot of people are talking about GLP-1s in the medical world, at least, or a lot of people are taking a GLP-1, and that's medications like Ozempic, Mounjaro, retatrutide.
So for those that don't know these, they're like weight loss
Weight
related,
loss,
or
yeah, reducing weight, improving insulin sensitivity and, blood sugar regulation, also reducing inflammation. So, they're absolutely not without risks, and I have some like really strong rules around when I, do put, or if I am consulting with people that are using them. But you can also stimulate your own GLP-1 receptors by looking after your gut bugs, which means taking the prebiotic fiber or having diversity in your meals so that your gut bugs flourish, and then they produce lots of those postbiotics. And then the postbiotics is what stimulates the GLP-1 receptor.
right? And that's what's in those supplements that people are trying to take for weight loss and all these other things. Fundamentally, they're just postbiotics. So if you want, not like I'm going to oversimplify that, but as in like,
Yeah.
if you want those postbiotics in these, medications, you flip the other way and you get it from increasing your prebiotics, feed the worms, get better worm castings.
Yeah, for sure. And look, the GLP-1 receptor agonist medications, there's been a lot of research that's gone into developing them so that, the half-life is a lot longer, because when we, stimulate that response in our body, the time that we stimulate it is quite short. But the GLP-1 medication is joined to a molecule that prevents it from being degraded. So that's why it has that much longer half-life of 1 week. So there's a few caveats with it, but absolutely you can definitely support your metabolic health by looking after your gut microbiome. I think that's very foundational.
Ooh.
I mean, Hippocrates, father of medicine, is credited with the quote that all disease begins in the gut. And I think physicians have been discussing that and deliberating that ever since he said that. But I think, to ignore the gut microbiome is to miss out on a really foundational piece of our health.
Yeah, and I think, I say this to myself, but also those people out there that, if you ever find yourself, obviously to me, when stress creeps in, the stresses of life, sometimes it's so easy to, either it's wine or it's a sweet or it's, not sticking to, the clean diet, some other stuff starts to come in, and that starts to feed a bit of a vicious cycle, doesn't it? Because that gut microbiome, it takes time to get it to a good spot. And then, once it goes out of whack, you have to put it back in shape again. So like, I guess those people out there that, get caught up in the quickness of life, what's some things they can remind themselves to maintain it or put into their routine?
Well, that's a good point, because I think, part of it is what we're eating, but the other part is how we're eating and when we're eating, the timing. So a lot of us eat on the go, or we eat distracted these days, and that's also not good for our digestion. The reason being, going back to that nervous system state, parasympathetic versus sympathetic, it's like parasympathetic is our digestion state. So if you are if you are in like having a really rush day, going from one thing to the next, and you are eating on the go, you haven't given your body any time to swap from the sympathetic activation into the parasympathetic activation, which is like when your body will know to release stomach acid and digestive enzymes and get that whole digestive process going. And that's like a common one that I see. People have a lot of digestive discomfort because they're eating really fast and they're not like giving their body the right signals. So it's, the challenge for us all, I think, in this modern day is like, take time, ideally 3 times a day, to sit without distraction, look at your food, because when the information comes through your eyes to your visual cortex, that also feeds back to your stomach, like, time to eat, we're looking at food. You might notice that salivation starts when you're looking at food. Same thing with smelling food. So take time to look at it and maybe use that as a mindfulness practice of like, what colors do I see? What have I got on my plate? How does it smell? And a good simple thing is like taking a few deep diaphragmatic breaths, or like big sigh it out, or just roll the shoulders around, because that deep belly breathing is how we can quickly activate that parasympathetic system that tells the body it's time to slow down, it's time to eat, it's time to receive. And then try to be present with your meal, try to chew. Digestion starts in the mouth. We have
What is chew?
something we all need to do more of.
Yeah, teeth, eh?
Yes, and our saliva contains those enzymes as well. So chewing is really important to get that first stage of digestion going. And even those simple behavioral changes around food, of like trying to take that intentional mealtime and have it be a bit of a like sacred, like a little reset time in your stressful day. I've seen that be very beneficial to people in terms of resolution of symptoms.
And it kind of just full circles back to that. It's not, obviously the word used in the medical industry is placebo, but I know Bruce Lipton talked about the biology of belief, from the concept of epigenetics, but more so what that does, and I think it's that psychoneuroimmunology landscape of like, what does that look like for us to bring wholehearted attention to the thing we're doing? And it seems like what you're saying is when we do that, not just, just shoving food in our face, we take a moment to activate, eyes, ears, sensory senses, then the body will then start doing a process that's very natural to make that digestion better, to make everything better, that can feed itself holistically.
Absolutely. It's kind of sad, but I feel like all of us are not so present in our day-to-day. So, meal times, it's like, well, we all have to eat maybe 2 to 3 times a day, depending what your individual preferences are. And it's like, well, why not use that time as a little mindfulness intentional practice and carve out that space for yourself in your day? Because it is, and this is the interplay. This is the interplay where I think psychoneuroimmunology is like a fantastic field, because it's taking something which has traditionally been seen in medicine as a bit of a soft science, like, how you feel and like your stress and like how that impacts your body, and actually putting it into like a very much like, no, this is a very observed physiological biochemical thing. Like, we know there's a central nervous system. We know that there's 2 parts of our autonomic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic. We know that there's a vagus nerve. We know that the afferent signals from gut up to the brain are more abundant, so 80%. So it's like all of this is
psyche, right?
Yeah, and it's starting to all get this very tangible backing to something that maybe felt a little bit like unexplainable before. So I think that's really exciting. And the other point I just wanted to touch on in terms of, the behaviors around food is the timing. So trying to have regular meal times is also really great for your nervous system, because basically your body, like your brain, loves to know the routine. So if it can predict that you're going to have breakfast at 8 a.m. every morning, it loves that, because then it already starts the digestive process at about 8 a.m. every morning. Same, it's like if you ever got a coffee headache when you stopped drinking coffee for a day or two. And that's a great example of your body preemptively causing some vasodilation in your in the vessels of your brain in anticipation of the coffee. The coffee causes a little bit of vasoconstriction, so that's why your body vasodilates. So it's like balancing. And when that coffee doesn't come, that vasodilation is what causes the headache. So, if you're someone who always has a coffee at 9 a.m. and then you miss a day and you get a headache, that's a great example of your body learning the routine. And if you can have those regular meal times, and please have breakfast before your coffee, then your body will be, that's a safety signal. So all of these things compound to provide a sense of safety for our body, which is ultimately very good, because when we're in that sense of safety, that's when our body is functioning optimally and it can repair and regenerate itself as well.
Full circle, foundations, come back to the basics. And, I know I've said it before, I keep saying it again. Like, I think the more technology advances, right, the things that we play with, AI and all these other things, I think we'll start to see more and more the technology of nature. Obviously, like you said, putting language to it, so can your immunology and all these other things that previous was just the way it was. But it seems like that's going to become, once again, resurgence, full circle, that going back to our functional selves is one of the most beneficial ways to live, to exist, to thrive, right?
Yeah, for sure. If anyone does want to like nerd out a little bit more on psychoneuroimmunology, then Dr. Olivia Lessler is the OG and absolute boss lady to follow or look up. Everything I know about it, I have learnt from listening to her, both in person lectures and also her podcasts and various resources. So
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure they go in the show notes. With that, Dr. Patterson, it has been an absolute pleasure. I know we could dive into so many more subjects that are coming from that, but to everyone out there, I hope that was at least, education. I thought we were able to bring that together. Just the more we learn, I feel the more we just have an awareness about things, we inadvertently improve our lives. And so with that, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming back onto the show. Look forward to having you on again and going a little bit further with, what are the most powerful things we can do for our body.
Sounds good. It's always good to chat.
Yeah, likewise. And with that, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for tuning in again. You can go into Spotify, 1,000 Year Plan. You can check out the show there, YouTube, Rolling Mic at the moment. But I'll see you next week. Tune in, and I'll speak to you guys soon. See ya.